media world has been taken over by digital technology, and for good reason. Shooting on film is expensive, like really expensive. And in the constant rush and busyness of work, our clients would not appreciate having to wait weeks for our images to develop in a dark room. Same with music. Why buy bulky vinyls and CDs that are also expensive when you can access literally every song in existence with a platform like Spotify? But then some people still use vinyls, and some people still shoot film. Why? Well, with digital cameras as good as they are now, it can start to become too perfect, to the point where it actually starts to look fake. As a working DP in the film industry, I like my cinematography to feel gritty and real. And shooting on film introduces certain imperfections and authenticity to the shot. Unfortunately, shooting film would cost way too much time and money to ever be practical on a small scale production. But does that mean we have to settle for an unrealistically clean image? Can the film look be replicated? Today, we're gonna find out. What's up everybody, Brady Bourne here. Welcome welcome back to the channel. A few weeks ago, Dehancer reached out to me about doing a review/tutorial of their film emulation software. And as a DP and director in the film industry, I usually have my footage being finished out by a professional colorist with Dehancer, so I'd seen it used, but I'd never personally used it. And I have been meaning to do a video on my post-production coloring process for quite a while now, sort of as a follow-up to the lighting video I did last year, as well as a video on editing iPhone photos, so more on that later in this video. Now, Dehancer did reach out to me and ask me to do this review. However, they specifically said they wanted an honest review, as they are always trying to improve their products, and so they did not tell me anything I have to say. Also, if at any point while watching this video you decide that you'd like to try Dehancer out for yourself, just use the code on the screen right here for 10% off. Here we are inside DaVinci Resolve. As you can see, I've not done any color grading to this clip yet, so I'm gonna go ahead and do my kind of normal stuff that I do. Now, it is worth mentioning that a lot of people will use Dehancer first, so they'll actually stick it up in their node tree first and kind of use that as the foundation for their color grade. I like to do my color adjustments first and then use this last, but either way will work totally fine. And you'll see once we get into Dehancer, there actually can be some advantages to doing it first. It just depends on the way you like doing stuff. So for my personal workflow, I don't even like using a log to Rec 709 LUT. I like to just go in and dial stuff in. So here we go. Starting off with just some contrast. Overall, it just needs to come up. Add a new node here. Jump over to LUTs. We're gonna use this one. It's just a little orange and teal LUT I use. And I'm gonna go back and rework some of this as I'm coloring with Dehancer, but I do like to have some of these adjustments done first. Make a new node, the bottom of the effects panel, Dehancer. Just gonna drag that right onto the node. And boom. Okay, so this is where things start to get fun, because right off the bat, I mean, you can look at what that did kind of without Dehancer and with Dehancer. And like right off the bat, I haven't even messed with anything. You can already see what this plugin is gonna do for you. We're gonna go through these settings because it's very customizable. And if you just slap the thing on, you're missing out on so much value that you can get out of this. So first thing I wanna do is this defaults to like all these things being open. I don't want that, so I'm gonna just hold down the option key as I click on this, and that will close them all for me, so that way I can jump around to whichever one I want. We are gonna start up here in input though. This is an important one in the source, and this is where it goes to depending on whether you're starting with Dehancer at the beginning of your process or after. So because I've started after, I've selected Rec 709. If I was starting it at the beginning, I would actually come down here and say, choose camera, and then come in here and go to Canon, and I would select the camera I'm using as well as the log profile I'm using. So obviously, because there's already adjustments, you can see how, messed up the image is getting now. But if you were starting at the beginning of the process, this is what you'd be able to do. And they have like all the cameras in here. And then film is the next spot. They have a lot of film stocks in here. You pull up this menu and I mean, you can see all of these options. One thing that would be really nice for them to do, I don't know if this is even possible with the way the plugin is built, but if hovering over these, you'd be able to see what the effect is gonna do, that'd be really helpful because it can take a little bit of time to come into them and click on each one and then have to reopen the window. It'd be nice if I could just kind of scroll through and see what they are. On the other hand, after a couple times, I was pretty quickly able to identify a couple of the ones that I like. Pretty much my default is this one right here, Kodak Gold 200. Anyway, there's a lot of different profiles in there and they're all really good. So just depending on what look you're going for, you definitely want to explore these once you get the plugin. Print is where we're gonna go next because this is gonna drastically affect the look of the image as well. So you can come in here. I like to use the, either one of these print films or the glossy paper. I think I've been liking the glossy paper a lot, but you know, it just depends on what kind of look you're trying to create. We will jump up to expand. And this is where my personal taste comes in a little bit more because generally you're gonna have more contrast, right? And that's what I like. I like a little bit more contrast. But for a film look, we might actually push the shadows up a lot more. And then you might actually bring the whites down. Again, it's more of a film look. So if you're going for a film look, you might want to do that, not quite as drastically as I did there. I do think there's maybe a little bit too much contrast here currently. So I am going to push this up, but maybe not quite as much as you normally would for an actual film look. Okay, that should be pretty good. We'll jump down to film grain now. This is actually one of those things about this plugin that I was very curious about, and I was wondering how well it would work. I was kind of worried that it wouldn't be customizable enough, I guess, but they did a good job and you'll see. So flipping on film grain, you have a lot of options. I think the main thing I was concerned about was not being able to turn the ISO down enough, because I like to just add a little bit where it's there, but it's not too like overwhelming and just kind of ruins your image, because there's already digital noise in the image. So I'd prefer to enhance that essentially and try to make it look a little bit more filmic, but I don't want to go too heavy. There's a lot of different options in here depending on what style of grain you're going to go for. I like landing on the 35mm, one of those, depending on what the shot is. So we'll go with the 35mm ISO 250. You can see when picking a higher one, it just adds more grain. And you can see I can bring it down to very minimal, like even at 0, like it's still there. So you can see I could even just do that if I wanted to, and it still adds a little bit. I like to, you know, add a little bit more than that. Usually sitting around 15-ish. Because you can see where I'm looking. I mean, over here in this corner is a good spot to look, but also the sheet of paper over here. If you watch that, you can really see all the grain pop up on there. So we don't need a lot more than that. Halation. Okay, halation and bloom are different, but they get confused a lot. So we're gonna talk about the difference here in a second, and you'll see, because halation is not really gonna work on this shot. It'll work on a different one I'm gonna show you. Bloom is gonna work really well on this shot. Bloom, I mean, either way, it's kind of what you think of when you're thinking of like a mist filter. That kind of hazy atmosphere. The light sources will glow almost. Halation does a very similar thing, except it's like tinted red, essentially. This is what halation does. You can see it get this red glow. All these highlights now have a red glow on them. So if I throw on mask mode, that's what it's adding. It really helps add the film look. It's a very, like that's a difficult thing to get in camera, but I feel like it looks really good for being added in post-production. Like it's a nice thing. So I'm also gonna be subtle on this. I'm not gonna go too crazy, but you know, somewhere around close to 50 is still good because it's not like a super obvious effect, but it adds that extra touch to it. So if we re-enable bloom here, that's kind of what you get with both of those. So you can see kind of the film damage effects and the breath and the gate weave and all that kind of stuff fluctuating around too. Didn't dial this shot in as much, but you can still kind of see the effect going. So if I turn on halation here, you're not really gonna see anything happen. And if I put it on mask mode, there's nothing. Contrast that with the bloom for this shot, where if I turn it on, you instantly saw that happen, right? Like you can see the difference there. Now this is another one of the effects in the plugin that I was very curious to see how it would perform specifically compared to a mist filter, because this shot in particular and a lot of the stuff I shoot on the Nisi Athena primes. So it's a very nice lens set. However, they're very sharp, clean lenses, which can be a good thing, and it can also be a little bit of a bad thing sometimes. I'm a big fan of like dirty anamorphic lenses and stuff. The Nisi Athenas are great for a lot of stuff, and it also gives you a little bit more of a clean slate as far as the look you're able to create in post. However, when shooting with the Athena lenses, to soften them up a little bit, I usually try to put a mist filter on the front. So I was curious how a mist filter would stack up with this. So I'm wanting to do a side-by-side test of that if I have time. Right off the bat, I'm already kind of impressed with how well the bloom thing works. So let me show you. Turning it on, you can see it's adding that kind of glow to the highlights. And again, you have a bunch of different modes in here, and custom also is nice because you can really dial in the effect you want. So that's nice, but I'm just gonna use the 35mm and then I'm gonna dial it into where I want it. Now, unlike grain, I like a lot more bloom. So we're gonna probably push it up closer to like 60. And you can see mask mode, you can kind of see what it's adding to the image. But just turning this on and off, you can see what it's doing. Now, turning it on and off, you're gonna notice a big difference and you might be tempted to like turn it down more. And don't go overboard with it. Like, you don't want it to just be like someone's face is just glowing. At the same time, you gotta think about if you're not seeing the before and after, the after won't be noticeable most of the time. Again, you could go overboard with it, but after looking at it for a second, you kind of forget that there's an effect on it. It looks really good. So I'm very impressed with the bloom in here. Again, curious to see how it stacks up compared to like an actual mist filter. But the bloom here is nice because with a mist filter, you'd have to pick a specific increment. And once you pick that, it's gonna be baked in. Here, I have the flexibility of adding more or taking it away and just dialing in that look. So it's nice. Film damage, I go light with this one. Probably the part of the plugin I think could use the most improvement. I feel like it just doesn't blend in super well and it can look a little bit fake. Now, I'm gonna show you and you'll see I just tone it down a lot and it ends up looking good. If you wanted to add more, it just doesn't look as good as I think it could, if that makes sense. We'll go ahead and enable the effect. And once again, you have all this stuff. I definitely use the custom mode on here because you can kind of dial in the exact amount of stuff that you want. And obviously the scratches and stuff will actually move frame by frame, so it can be helpful to actually play back video rather than just stare still. Same for a couple of the other effects in here, but dust amount, I'm gonna pull down to like 3. Scratches, I'm gonna pull down to like 5. And then I'm gonna pull down, I push the total amount down a little bit. I don't need a whole lot of stuff in here. Again, when you actually play it back, you really see the scratches pop up more rather than just looking at a still. So I definitely pull the effect down a lot more just because, I don't know, I personally don't think it looks quite as good. Maybe it would look better if I had less contrast on the image. I don't know. This is just the way I use it. So play around with it, but I feel like there's gotta be a way to make the scratches and hairs and stuff just blend in a little bit more and feel like it was actually shot there rather than just being an overlay. Now, film breath and gate weave, the next two effects. These are kind of the same as film damage, where you're not really gonna see them that much unless you're actually playing the footage back, because these are like movement effects. So film breath, I'll turn it on, you can kind of see what this is doing. As you watch, particularly in some of these areas over here, like if you watch kind of in this corner, you'll see some coloration movement essentially. So some of those colors are shifting from like green, pink, and blue. So that's kind of that film breath effect where it's just feeling a little bit more organic and like it's breathing, I suppose. And then gate weave, this. Now, you might not notice right off the bat what it's doing. Watch toward the edges of the frame. You'll see it kind of jittering, like the whole image is jittering a little bit. It's a pretty subtle effect. You're not gonna see it a lot, but I'll do it on, off, on. It's cropping in a little bit so that it can actually do the jitter. I'm gonna pull the effect down a little bit. It's already pretty subtle, but I'm gonna make it even more subtle. Pull it down to about 50. Don't need a whole lot of that. And turning film breath back on. I'm gonna pull that down to about 50 as well, I think. See how that looks. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And then obviously these have the same profile options. So I'd recommend the profile, like the 35mm, 16mm, whatever one you use, like pick one and then kind of stick with it across the board, because those are based off of actual formats of cameras. So I think it's gonna look best if you kind of stick with it. But I mean, you are adding this effect in post, so if you need a little bit more of something, then you can always pop down to Super 8, and then you're gonna get a lot more of whatever the effect is, you know. You're gonna see a lot more colors on that one. Now, Overscan, I don't use this one a whole lot, but you'll see what it is as soon as I enable it. Boom, that's what an Overscan is. I will say, I don't really use this effect, but it is nice that it's in here. I have acquired, for some reason, a lot of overlays of Overscans. I rarely use any of them. I will say, now that I have Dehancer, if I ever do need one of them, I will probably be adding it in Dehancer, not with one of the other overlays I have, because there's a lot of customization features in here, and it's in the software, it's in the color grade. It just works better, I think. I'll just kind of flip through them so you can kind of see what they look like. So yeah, that's kind of what the Overscan is, and you got all the options for changing stuff. You can negative or positive, static gate, non-static gate, you know, flip, whatever you want to do. So great customization options for Overscan. Again, I don't use it a whole lot, but when you do need it, then Dehancer's got you covered. Vignette, they make it really easy in here, and you got all the normal options you need. So if you want to blend it in, kind of do it at the end of the process, it's not a bad idea to do it right here inside Dehancer. Now, personally, when I am making my vignettes, I like to pull the feather all the way off, pretty much. Pull the exposure down a little bit. That way I can dial in the shape I want and the size I want. So I want this to have a little bit more of an oval shape. We're gonna do that. And then we'll kind of pick our feather amount here. That looks pretty good. In the monitor section, this is something that can just be helpful throughout your process. You have false colors so you can see where all of the shadows in this image are, which, you know, it's a dark shot, so there's gonna be a lot of shadows, and then you can see where the highlights are. Clipping information, just some helpful monitor tools in there for when you're trying to dial in the look you want. Output, also a nice feature. This is essentially just the look as a whole, so you can see what that did. And the reason this might be helpful is, say you made your whole look and you're like, yes, this looks amazing, this is great, but you realize it's a little bit too much. At that point, rather than going into every individual section and trying to dial everything down a little bit, you can just come in here and just pull this down and say, okay, yeah, that's where we want it, right? Ideally, you don't have to use that and you can dial everything in before then, but this is a nice feature if you need to be able to dial the overall look back a little bit. Then they got the LUT generator in here and options. This is a good thing to know when you are working. Put it on normal, fast. That's the quality and the speed at which things are going to be rendering and loading for you. When you go to export, switch this over to high, slow. That'll make sure that you get the best quality possible while you're exporting. Another interesting thing that I think can help with the film look that I haven't seen anyone else talking about is the aperture you shoot at. If you're shooting wide open, getting lots of shallow depth of field, it's not gonna look like film. It's gonna look very digital and clean. You really do wanna be able to see the background. I could get into a whole rant on why shallow depth of field isn't cinematic, but I won't, I'll just leave it at that for now. Moving on now, but if you have any questions about anything I just showed you, feel free to drop a question down below. I will do my best to try to answer the questions you have about the software. Alrighty, let's take a minute now to talk about editing iPhone photography. When I'm editing photos on my phone, I will use a variety of different apps to get the job done. But today, since we're talking about Dehancer and film emulation, I'm going to focus in on Dehancer's mobile app. And it is like really, really easy to use. Still giving you the full flexibility of what you get with the desktop version. I don't think there's any options you don't have in the app. I haven't noticed any differences really. It's just optimized for mobile and for photography, so it's super easy to use. I'm gonna show you guys. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll just come into the normal Photos app, take a photo like this, for example, and we are going to just do some basic adjustments. Just gonna bring the highlights down, retain some of that detail, maybe give it a little bit more warmth. I always like to give a little bit of magenta in there. And I'm not gonna do a whole lot else simply because I am gonna be taking it into Dehancer and adding a little bit of a film look there, so I don't really want to change too much. I might add a little bit of contrast here. I'm gonna open up the Dehancer app here. You can just tap open photo or video in the middle there, and now I can navigate to the right album. Here's that photo, gonna import it into here, and boom. Just like that, we have a bunch of options. I'm going to kind of start like this. So it's gonna give you options to use original, maybe your last edits. If you just wanna do something similar, it'll save that. So I'm gonna find Kodak Gold 200 is usually my go-to. There's so many different film prints in here though, so you can really dial in any look. I mean, a black and white look could honestly look kind of cool in this photo. So right there, I think I like that one. Yeah, alrighty. I'm gonna flip over to edit here. All right, so just some nice settings to be aware of here for while you're editing. Just hold down on the screen to flip back to the original. That way you can see kind of before and after of where you're at in the edit. Up in the top left corner, you have a histogram option, so that way you can see if your highlights or shadows are clipping or crushed. And then a redo and undo buttons up in the top right corner, as well as a reset button up next to the histogram. Now down here, you can expand kind of the settings like this so that you can see, you know, bigger or smaller. I generally leave them smaller because I want to see the image as large as possible. And then all of the settings are down here just like you have on the desktop app. A nice thing here is that you can tap those settings, and if the little blue dot is showing up next to it, then you know it is on. I like to come over and turn off film grain, halation, bloom, vignette, and then I'll go back in and turn them all back on in a second. But I like to just worry about a couple settings earlier on first. So I will go ahead and start with print because I picked Kodak Gold 200. Now I want to pick through the profiles. So I like the glossy paper, and then there's a couple others in here. For this one, I'm definitely liking the glossy paper, but there's plenty of options in there. I'm going to come over to expand. I'm going to lift the shadows a little bit and darken the white. It's basically decontrasting, and that's why I said I wanted to add contrast before I brought it in here, just to balance everything out a little bit. Because I still like my images to be contrasty, but when you're trying to make it look like it was shot on film, you can't have as much contrast as you normally would want. I think I like it just about there. Compression, I'm gonna leave the same. Source if you need to, adjust anything, but I just make sure that I have stuff set how I want it before it comes in here. Then the next thing would be grain. I really like the film grain setting. I did not think I was gonna like it this much, but it's really nice. This is where you have tons of options, but you can also make it really simple. So in the profile right here, you have all those options, and I find it tends to default the custom, which is nice because I do like the custom option. However, most of the time, I'm just gonna pick one of these presets and then just pick the amount. So it works it's really fast, and it works really well. So we will try, I feel like I generally like 35 mil. Just adjust the grain amount. So if I throw it all the way up, you can really see that grain start to come in. I like to keep it minimal, but on photos, I don't mind a little bit more than I do on video, because with video it moves around. With photo, it's gonna stay still, so it's not as noticeable, so I tend to push a little bit more in than I would on a video. I think we'll be good right around 20. All right, halation is gonna do probably nothing for this one, but I will turn it on just in case it is doing something. And then bloom, we should see something here. I'm gonna go to the 35mm setting. And you can see I'm just playing with these sliders until I get the look that I want. So you can see like 0 to 100. I'm gonna probably settle for right around 80. See before and after. Yeah, I really like that. And then vignette. You all know what a vignette does. It looks pretty good. I like to keep the vignettes subtle. Okay, film damage is the one thing where I feel like it could just blend in a little bit more. I can get it to blend and just turn like the overall impact down, but it just doesn't blend as well as like the bloom and some of the other settings do. So I'll show you how I make it look good though. I actually kind of like what it's doing right now. I might actually add a little bit more dust. We'll see what that does. I'm gonna leave everything else where it is. Actually, I'm gonna bring up scratches. So here's what we have so far. before, after, before, after. The last thing that you can do is overscan, and there's a lot of overscan options in here. You can see like that looks pretty cool. I don't really tend to use the overscans, but if you're a fan of them, then you will not be disappointed by the amount of options you have in here. A lot of different gate types, no matter what you want, gate shape. You have a lot of customization options for what you want this to look like. I'm just flipping through a couple of them here so you can see, but yeah, super, super nice settings in there. I'm gonna leave it off for this one because I like the photo without it. And then you can just export it. So that was a brief overview of the Dehancer app. If you have any other questions about the app, I'll be trying to answer as many as I can in the comments. Just let me know, and I really hope that that was interesting. All right, on to whatever's next in this video. I forget what the script was. Alrighty, well, there you have it. The last thing I'm gonna tell you is go get Dehancer. Go try it out. Have fun. Start incorporating it into your workflow. You will not be disappointed unless you forget to use this 10% off coupon code, because I mean, it's right there. It's for you to use. No, but like, actually, why are you still watching this video? Go to dehancer.com, put the code in, and get grading. Anyway, thanks for watching, and as always, make it epic.